Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Half Hour, and I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Betty Rhoades. She is a speaker, coach, and consultant, and I met Betty through a mutual friend, Danielle Cobo. And Danielle, you'll get to see her. She's coming on an upcoming episode as well. So we're all friends here, but one of the reasons that I just wanted to highlight that is because listeners, building a network of people who have similar goals and ambitions is so important. And I got to support Betty in one of her endeavors. She had a keynote summit, and now she gets to support me coming on the podcast to share her story. So it's just really cool when you get to build your network. But anyways, Betty, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's so great to be with you again. I loved our summit interview, so I'm super excited for the conversation.
Yeah, me too. So I would love for you to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, about your business, what you're doing these days.
Great. Well, so I started SheSpeaks, which is my coaching and consulting firm, a little over a year ago. So it's still pretty new, but the goal really is to help people make a bigger impact in their lives, in their work, by really working with them to speak up and speak out. It really is about whether it's coaching one-on-one or working with organizations and consulting or doing speaking for groups. It's all about finding that happy place where you are showing up in the best possible way to do the work that you do, but you're doing it in a way that's authentic to you.
I
You're
love
not
that.
having to put on a mask or pretend to be someone else. You can mesh your authentic self with whatever your work is. And that's really important to me in my work.
Yes, and you said so many things that I'm also really passionate about. So I want to start with the first one, just the title of your business, She Speaks. That is so powerful. How did you land on that? Was that just come to you like instinctually, or what happened? Like, that's amazing because it's so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, naming a business, I imagine, is much like naming a child.
It's
It's like
hard.
a lot of pressure because, yes, you can change it, but especially starting my first business, I really was conscious of, okay, I want people to really, in a short way, be able to understand who I am and what I'm all about. And I think initially when I started my business, I thought I was going to be really exclusively working with women. I do not work exclusively with women, as it turns out, but I really do have a soft spot for professional women and particularly women in male dominated industries. So I also really love alliteration. So anything that got me the two S's, I was very excited
Yeah,
about.
I'm an alliteration person too. Like Lene, you've met Lene. She's
Yeah.
always like, "Oh, let me guess, this is going to be like all A's or all S's," or I'm like, "Yes,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely."
it always it helps people remember, it helps me remember. So yeah, I felt like it really just sort of summarized who I am, what I'm all about, and kind of gives people an insight into what I do.
Yeah, I do want to talk about what your backstory is here in a second and how you got to this place. But there's another piece that you said that really resonated with me, and maybe two, and I'm going to try to bring them into one thought. Is one is that you're saying you really have a passion for helping women in male dominated industries. And then you also said that speaking from that like authentic core, right, is really like where your passion lies. And I would say that to a certain degree, women who have grown up in male dominated industries, myself, have had to really lean into their masculine and probably have, we also mentioned mask, have a mask, have tilted away a little bit from their authentic core. There's a part of them that's really authentic because they're business minded. We do have a lot of powerful corporate women that listen to this podcast specifically. So I would just love to hear your 2 cents on that, if you don't mind.
Well, it's actually a really good segue into how I got here
Great.
because I spent about 20 years, I'm a lawyer by education, and realized that practicing law was not really what I wanted to do. I tried it and it just wasn't for me. So I went into public service and I went
Mm,
into government for a long time. And then I did some time in the nonprofit industry. But the entire almost 20 years of all of that was in the military connected space.
wow.
Talk about male dominated, right?
Yes.
So
Hmm.
here I am, a woman, a non veteran. I did not serve in the military. And I found that early in my career, I felt like I had to put on that mask and I had to
Mm,
be somebody else in order to be successful. And then as I went through my career, I started feeling a lot more cognitive dissonance with kind of who I really was at home in life versus who I was trying to be at work. And that's really uncomfortable. I think we don't talk about this enough that when you're not being your authentic self, it's really uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good to hide parts of yourself. So I felt it myself, and I saw many
mhm.
other women doing the same thing to their detriment. We think
Yes.
that we have to, like you said, lean into that masculine piece, but most of the time, it just doesn't work. And it certainly doesn't work long term, trying to put parts of yourself in a box and not bring them to work. So I spent all this time in this space, and then we were in DC for a really long time. And then my husband got this great opportunity out in California. And I kind of had that epiphany where I was like, this is the pivot point. This is my
Ooh, I just got the
opportunity.
goosebumps.
Yeah,
I
this
can
is
feel
my
it.
opportunity to
Hmm.
really shake it up and do something different. I never in a million years thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. I'm a lawyer. We're very risk averse. It's scary. So it was something, that's how I got connected with Danielle. Was she is my coach, and
Hmm.
so she kind of helped me really like work through what this transition was going to look like. And as we were chatting, the things that continue to come up were, I've seen all these amazing women go through their career and really be hurt by the
Yes.
fact that they're not comfortable being themselves. So it really was just a reflection and an analysis of kind of the things that really stuck out to me in my first chapter of my career. And I'm just so grateful that I get to now take all of that and channel it into helping other women. Because, man, I wish I had somebody to help me back then. I mean, if I had found Danielle earlier, like, goodness gracious. And so if I can help the women coming behind me to skip some of these steps and really hone in on their authenticity earlier in the process, we all win. And that's
Yes.
a good thing.
There's so much about what you shared that I love, but I think what I like most is that you're calling the issue out, right? And that you have experienced it, you're on the other side of it, and now you're helping other women. I just think that's the way we should evolve. I feel like that too after some of the situations that I've been through. I almost feel like a calling in me to reach my hand down and pull up. So I just thought that really moved me because I identify with that. And then also just the truth that the masking and the compartmentalizing does become really painful.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does. And I know in my own journey, when I wasn't in alignment with my authentic core, and of course you come in and out even when you have awareness, but when you're always out or always working to hide, it's exhausting. And I know that when I was exhausted, I wasn't putting my skills, strengths, and talents to the best use.
Right. And it's not just at work, right? So if you're doing these things that are uncomfortable in your professional life, that comes home with you and it impacts your personal relationships. And my husband and I have had various times over the course of our very long relationship where we've had to stop each other and say, what's going on? Because this isn't you.
Ooh,
And
nice.
getting to the heart of that is going to not only help people professionally, but it's going to help personally as well. Because when you feel like yourself and you're comfortable in your skin and you're proud of who you are, then yeah, you're exactly right. You nail on the head. You bring your best self when you can do that.
Ah, man, I got the goosebumps. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. So I love one of the things that I love about the show is I always ask a question of what's something that a challenge you've had to overcome or an obstacle you had to overcome. And that could be personally or professionally, but I love the audience to tune into that because we all have our struggles. And I know so many people see the success, but they don't know what it took to get there. So anyway, that's why I asked the question, but I would love for you to just pick a moment in time in Betty's world and share an obstacle or lesson or yeah, challenge you had to overcome.
There are so many choices.
I know,
My
right? I'm like, which one? You went last week or
Yeah, right. My parents always joke, I have a younger sister, and she was kind of the genius of the family. Everything seemed to come very easy to her. And I was the kid that like got knocked down all the time and had to figure it out. nothing ever came easy. But I think really my kind of resilience and the challenge that I think defines a lot about how I approach the world was I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 19 years old. It was a crazy story. I was in college, it was my freshman year. I was in one of those giant like lecture classes where there's 300 people. It was biology, and I'm definitely not the math and science person. And so I hardly ever went to that class. But one day I did. The teacher was doing a presentation about cancer and carcinogens, and she showed a slide of a malignant skin tumor. And I was like, huh, that actually looks like
Wow.
something that I have on my leg. And that's weird. So called the dermatologist. Of course, she said, it's probably nothing, but yeah, come in, we'll test it. And sure enough, right before final exams that semester, I found out that I had malignant melanoma and I was going to need to go home and have surgery. I'm incredibly lucky that it was found early and that I was able to be treated surgically. At 19, that knocks you down. And
Yeah, that's
it's not
a
something that
big
you,
one to overcome. Yeah, I
yeah,
see
it's
it.
not something that you think you're going to have to deal with, but just the nature of who I am. When I came out the other side of that and I was back in school and back to being healthy, I wanted to talk about it because
Wow.
that's the way that I process. And so talking about it led to conversations with university administration about disability access on campus and how it could be improved. It led to doing fundraising events to raise money for the American Cancer Society on campus. And it created conversations that I think were important to have. And through every subsequent challenge in my life, and as we discussed, there have been a lot, I come at it from this sense of, okay, nothing is forever.
Hmm.
And what are the tools that we need to use to tackle this? And what do we need to talk about to make sure that somebody else has the resources that they need and knows that they're not alone and that other people have gone through this? And so I think that's really stuck with me all these years in terms of, hey, you got a problem? Let's talk about it and let's figure it out. Let's find other people who have gone through this. Let's build community, like you said. Let's look to our networks to see who can tap
That's
in and
awesome.
help. Those are all really simple but important steps
Very,
when we're
very important.
tackling challenges.
You have a lot of, like, I'm just using the word like advocate in you. Like
Yeah.
when you learn something you like to share. I do too. I see that shining through and I was like, oh, that's really awesome. I also see that you maybe have like a little bit of, I don't know what I want to call it, rebel, but like rebel and underdog in you
Yeah, for
too.
sure.
And so I'm identifying with that. I was like, yeah, I got some of that too. I like that you almost stick up. That's why I said like underdog for people who might not have the awareness or the education that they need. That's really remarkable. It's just crazy when you come through the other end of something like that. So I'll share something with you. I think this might only be the second time I've shared this on the podcast, but in 2017, I think it was, I got diagnosed with breast implant illness. I was
Mm,
extremely sick and
mm,
autoimmune disease at the same time. And I was extremely sick. I had come out of all the burnout stuff that you know about, but there was about a year and a half later, my body responded to
mm,
everything that I went through. And I got this diagnosis, which honestly took me a really long time to get. I had to go through a mirage of doctors. Nobody was really listening. Everybody was telling me I'm fine. It's in my head, all that stuff. And then finally, I was getting to a point. I mean, I was 39 with arthritis in my hands. And it took the rheumatologist, it took him to refer me to a functional medicine doctor who then was able to be brave enough to tell me what was really going on. And
mm,
so I remember the diagnosis point and getting told and what that felt like. And I remember to myself too, because I really have that rebellious thing. I'm like, I get to choose how I respond to this. And yes, I was afraid, but at the same time, I'd never been through a major diagnosis before. I didn't know much about autoimmune disease, but my hair was like falling out in circular clumps. It was sick. And breast implant illness, I didn't even know that was a thing. And so, anyway, I immediately got the implants out. I went through surgery 2 months later, got them removed, cleaned up the autoimmune. So, currently, I'm negative. I don't have it, quote unquote, anymore. But then I started really sharing the story of breast implant illness, what the symptoms felt like. And in doing so, women who thought they were going crazy, I know at least 3 or 4 people that have gone and got explanted because of me sharing my story. So that's why I was resonating with you. I was like, I love that you went deep because I think so many people feel like we're alone
Yeah.
when you get
Well,
cancer and different things like that, but we're not, you know?
Well, I think also that challenge set me up for future challenges from the standpoint of as soon as we got the information, my parents and I immediately went into like, okay, problem solving mode. Okay,
Hmm.
what do we do? Okay, we got to do ABC, we got to take these steps, and then we're going to see where we are, and then we're going to reevaluate. And when you feel like there's a balance, right? Because we all want to control things, and when we go too far on the side of control, it can be
Yes.
really, really uncomfortable as well. But I think that it's really important when you're facing an obstacle to think about, okay, what are the things that I can control about this? And then how am I going to approach that? And then it becomes a little bit easier to let the things that you can't control go, feeling like you're doing everything that you can. Yeah. So I think that set me up for future problem solving, future challenge negotiating. And you also realize anytime you have a health problem of any significant nature, you realize, okay, most of the other stuff is just not that critical. It's just not that important.
No, I totally understand what you're talking about. And I think that when you're able to take these difficult situations and learn how to respond to them, it also, the thing that was coming to me that I didn't realize when I had to do similar things is that it increased my confidence.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can do hard things.
Yes, 100%. And the more challenges you face, the more that builds. So, in a way, I had it great. Yeah, things were easy for my sister, but it allowed me to develop skills that I could leverage and continue to leverage every day. Not that people who have things easy don't also have skills, but I think those
Yes.
resiliency skills and problem solving and just general balance and understanding of the important things in life, I think those are really solid life skills
Yeah,
that we can use
they
throughout
certainly
our
are.
journey.
I got the goosebumps again. I'm like, yes, Betty, you're hitting the goods. So I love that you ended up talking about skills in that response because that's what I talk about too. Like a lot of these times, our adversity gives us access to strengths we didn't know we had, kind of like what you were talking about. And then if you can amplify those strengths, that's when you get to make impact. That's when you get to do what you're doing now, like having your own business and things like that as well. So it's just really cool. I love that you went there. I want to pivot to another question. What is a current lesson or aha that's up for you right now?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the biggest thing that I've been focusing on recently that was an aha that I've been sharing with my clients is a lot of times what my clients are looking for is help in dealing with other people. So, how can I interact better with my boss? How can I interact better with my team? That sort of thing. And I think I had an aha moment not too long ago where I realized that a lot of our conflict with other people comes from us all as humans bringing assumptions into the mix. We
That's a good
assume
one.
people's intent when they speak to us. We assume that we know certain things about who they are and what they have going on. And it really is those assumptions that can derail conversations and relationships. It's not that we're bad people or they're bad people or that we're never going to work together. Well, it's just that we think we know more than we actually know. And so,
Yes.
one of the things I've been working on with my clients recently is breaking down that very natural human behavior of assuming things about other people and trying to like break ourselves of that habit. It's hard, right? Because we come to all conversations and interactions with a history of everything we've ever experienced. And so our
Yes.
brains think that we can make these conclusions based on these patterns. But as you know, everybody's got crazy stuff going on behind the scenes that maybe
Yes.
nobody else knows about. And so it's really important for us to come with a clean slate essentially to the table. Now, yes, we can have understandings of people if we've worked with them for a long time and we feel like we know things about them. But it's still really important to check yourself and see, what assumptions am I bringing to the table? Am I assuming that this conversation is tense because XYZ?
Yeah, I love
Or
that.
am I going to approach it with curiosity and grace and give that other person some space to, I guess, challenge the assumptions that I might have? That's something that's been an aha for me
I
recently.
really like that you're talking about that. I don't know that I've had anybody respond that way before. And so it's kind of like a new topic for the listeners, which is great. But it is really important to go in, like you said, open. We're like meaning making machines, and we like to form meaning before we even like have the conversation, right? We've observed, we're like, okay, this is how this is going to go down. I could give you
Mhm.
play by play. I've been in this type of meeting
Right.
before, or
Right.
whatever. And so I think it is important that we don't go in with the assumption. So high five. That was a good one. I like
Yeah,
it.
you never know what's going on with somebody else. And so it's a good check. And you would hope that somebody would give you the same courtesy in your interactions as well. So demonstrating the behavior can definitely help.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, next question. Why are you passionate about this work, as if it's not already like bleeding through you?
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, you heard a little bit in my backstory about how I spent all this time in the military arena and definitely saw some not so fun examples of misogyny and
Sure.
sexism and bias in the workplace. And so I definitely feel passionate about doing everything that I can to break that down and educate people and counteract that. I think the other thing that we haven't really talked about yet is one of the main tools that I use in my work is public speaking. And that is another thing that I'm super, super passionate about. And for me, that has been the thing that has always come easy to me. My mom says I was performing like as soon as I came out of the womb. And I've always been super comfortable on stage in a lot of different capacities, whether it's speaking or singing or whatever. And that's another thing that I saw in my career, that a lot of women were so intimidated by public speaking that they passed on opportunities that would have really been beneficial for them
Sure.
professionally and personally. And so I'm really passionate about breaking down the fear and anxiety around public speaking, because it is such a powerful tool for leveling up in virtually every aspect of professional life. And we need to hear more women's voices. We need
Yes.
to hear everyone's stories, because there's something to learn from everyone. And that's why I love podcasts like yours, because you get to do that. And it's something that we just need a lot more of. And
I couldn't agree more.
yeah,
I feel like we're kind of kindred spirits. I'm like, I'm so happy we've been connected, because that's why I had a different podcast originally called the High Achievers Club. And because I work with a lot of high achievers. So I'm like, oh, we'll just make a club out of it. It was my first podcast. I didn't know. And it was very topic based, which is fine because there's podcasts that are information based and stuff. But what I really loved were the stories.
yeah,
And then the podcasts that did really well were the ones where there was story. Because, like you said, that's where we get to learn from each other, right?
yeah.
And
Well,
so I
and you've
just,
already highlighted the importance of having a network that you can turn to. And that goes hand in hand. Networking is public speaking. Anytime you're speaking to someone besides yourself, the voices in your head sadly do not count as an audience.
that's
But
hilarious.
anytime you're talking to somebody else, that's public speaking. And networking is such an important type of public speaking, building relationships, building meaningful
Yes.
connections. And
Yes.
the more we're comfortable doing that, the more powerful our networks become. And like, women get shit done, period. So
We do. True
we
story.
need more women out there getting shit
Yes.
done. And
Yes.
so I'm so passionate about it, because I know there's so much more work to be done in our world.
There is.
And let's
Those
get
brave
everybody
enough to
to do it.
share get to be part of that change, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think too, is one of the things I like about the work that you do and the type of work that I do, especially when we're speaking, is you get to, maybe through whatever your story you're illustrating or telling, it creates a spark,
Yeah.
right? And that spark, you never know. You might not ever hear from that person again who got a spark, but they might go do something really incredible.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important, because it is like that. At some time, there's a shift in the collective when enough people do it. So I'm like, totally into everything that you're saying.
Yeah,
Yes.
just builds on all of that. And then there's this huge collective impact that's undeniable.
So cool. All right. So we have one more question and then we'll wind down. So I always like for our guests, because it's the empowered half hour, to round it out, finalize our conversation with an empowerment something. So, how could our listeners take our conversations today and live a little bit more empowered life? And we talked about a lot. So, I don't know which nugget you want to go from, but it's yours.
I think it's kind of a two-part nugget. The first part is the world needs what you have. And the
I love
second part
that.
of that nugget is it's because you are you. And so be you. There are ways that you can be in the most professional environments in the world, the most buttoned up kind of stodgy suit wearing environments that you can think of. You can still be you. I think there's this weird misunderstanding that authentic does not mean professional. And you can be authentically you and be polished. They're not
100%.
they're not opposed, authenticity and professionalism. They're not opposed. You may have to slightly shift, but everyone can do it. It's just figuring it out. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is that the world needs you. And so tap into you and find that place where you are comfortable, and there's going to be no stopping you.
Damn, what a powerful message. I love it. And mic drop. I'm going to ask this in two ways, but first, how can listeners follow you and find you?
Okay, good question. All right, I'm on all the socials that you got to be on. Betty Rhoades Speaks is the handle kind of across the board, and it's Rhoades with all the extra vowels to make it complicated. I'm sure it will be in the show notes.
It
So
will be
just
in the show
look
notes,
at
yeah.
it there. But yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, those are the places where you can kind of engage and follow on social. And I try to really put a lot of value out there so that people can, like you said, get that spark and decide that they're going to take something on because I put something out there that's interesting. My website is SheSpeaksCoaching.com. There's some information there about the different things that I offer. But if you shoot me a message on any of those platforms, I am very much active in my DMs. So I'm always
Awesome. Because I was
excited
going
to
to
chat
ask the
with
second
people.
part to that question was if someone's interested in like consulting or speaking, would they find you at the website or on the platforms too?
Yeah, you can do that, but I'll even throw out, I'm just Betty at SheSpeaksCoaching.com. I always love to get messages and emails from folks.
Awesome.
And yeah, please reach out to me. I love people if you can't tell. So I'm always excited to make a new connection.
So great. So great. Well, Betty, thank you so much for coming on the Empowered Half Hour. It was an empowering conversation for sure. I'm so happy.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.